Hey there, friends. It's Jasmine the Story Sloth. Welcome, and join me as I share with you my story about a man fascinated with time. I can feel it moving, the twist and the turn of the universe around me, the movement of time. My heart beats with the rhythm of the ever-ticking clocks on my walls. They tick and tick without mercy. On and on they go, whether I pay attention or not. I love these clocks. Every single one is unique and distinctly itself. Can you see it? Can you see how beautiful they are? Every little detail is a delight to me. Look closely and you might get to appreciate them the way I do. I keep them in pristine condition, you see. I care for them like you might care for one of your pets. Oh, this is a pleasure for you to come and visit me. I don't get very many visitors. I can't remember the last time someone stopped by to see me. Your visit is a wonderful surprise. Oh, yes, most wonderful. Most wonderful. Ah, but dear me, I'm not being a very good host. Forgive me, kind stranger. Why don't you sit down and make yourself comfortable? I shall fetch you some tea. Just be comfortable and get lost in the fascination of the clocks. They will entertain you while I'm gone. I won't be gone long. Not long. Not long at all. Oh, I do hope my guest is at ease. I hope they don't leave. I must make this tea quickly. Yes, I must be aware of the time. Time. Oh, dear, the time. Maybe I'm gone too long already. Maybe my guest is bored, and time is stretching out their boredom and bringing it to a heated conclusion of needing to do something. Maybe my guest is frustrated with the ticking. Oh, the ticking. Maybe I should go back without the tea, just grab some little cakes from the cupboard and rush back before too much time slips away. It will slip away before I can grasp this very happy time with my guest. My guest will want to leave. They won't likely want to stay. Oh, yes, I must get back to my guest. But I told them that I would make tea. Oh dear, I promised the refreshment of tea. I shall put the water on to boil. Yes, I shall do that, and while the water boils, I will bring these cakes to my guest. And we shall save more time to enjoy the company of each other. Ah, dear guest of mine, I see you're still here. How pleased I am that you did not leave. I have brought you some little cakes to enjoy while the water comes to a boil. I will set them here on the coffee table. Do you like it, by the way, the coffee table? I bought it years ago from a carpenter who did the finest of woodwork. His skill is unprecedented even to this date. He worked out of his home in a very small cabin in the mountains up north. I arranged for the table to be shipped to my humble dwelling here, but not before I took it upon myself to travel to those northern mountains and visit the carpenter. What's that you say? How did I find out about him? Oh, yes, of course, I didn't think to clarify that. I had seen projects in my hometown that the carpenter had completed. Story has it that a young lad traveled to the great northern mountains and happened upon the carpenter's shop and bought a walking stick. The lad journeyed back home, and people were so astonished with the fine woodworking that the walking stick possessed that they all wanted the lad to show them where this magician of woodworking lived. So the boy became a travel guide, and people took back and forth to the little cabin in the northern mountains, and as time would have it, time. Yes, time shifted things around until the lad had himself a fine little business of selling the old man's products. And that is how I came across the idea of getting myself a finely made coffee table to complement my house. So I traveled the many miles to the old man's house in the mountains, and I finally met this wizard of his trade. He was not so fantastical as people had made him out to be. Funny how time warps a story all out of shape, isn't it? But I tell you this, the old man may have lived in the simplest of cabins, nestled in one of the grandest displays of nature, but he surely knew what I was really looking for. He looked at me that day as I stood before his house. He pushed his glasses up and looked at me for what felt like a very long time. Oh, such a long time. He finally said to me, "Well now, son, why don't you come with me and I will show you something that you might be wanting more than a mere table to set in your house." The old man invited me into his cabin and took me over to the far wall where a stone fireplace had been built in and a fine mantel ordained it. Upon the mantel sat a simple wooden clock. It was splendid to me, just splendid. It captured my attention and I was entranced. The fine wood, smooth beneath my fingertips, and that soft tick, tick, ticking, with the ambiance that only a clock can pull off. Oh, my dear guest, how I felt the magic of it then, the thrill of listening to the only sound of time that we have figured out to achieve. The constant reminder of time moving steadily on, the relentless yet gentleness of it. I felt myself becoming so lost in the clock that it took several times of the old man clearing his throat before I was startled out of my trance. Oh, my dear guest, have you ever found something like what I found that day in the old man's cabin? Something so magical and wonderful and terrible that has been there all along, but you've just never noticed it. I don't know if the old man put a spell on me or if he just knew that I would be eternally captivated by time and the mechanisms we have of measuring the passing of it. Either way, I left the old man's cabin with the clock in my bag, and I offered to pay for it, of course, but the old man gave it to me on one condition. And this is what he said. "Dear boy, you have found joy and thrill in a small thing. You have noticed the beauty of a clock and the passing of time. This is your gift, your one solace in all of life. That whenever you are overwhelmed or upset, you can sit by this clock and feel the magic of it that you felt here. But I warn you, should you attempt to find all the mysteries of time, you will be thrown into chaos. Should you let your vanity get the better of you, you will experience the madness of one haunted by time. And finally, dear boy, remember the joy of the clock that you feel here in my cabin. It works best in a simple life. Time is most at ease in the simple life. Keep time at ease, and it will bless you with comfort and peace throughout your life." So I took the magic clock and eagerly made my journey back home. I ordered the coffee table on my way out of the old man's cabin and had it delivered to my very door. I moved the table into this room where you see it now, and, my dear guest, I put the clock upon it. Many an evening I sat here. After a long day I would listen to the clock and be transported back to that wonderful feeling of fascination and delight that I had first felt in the old man's cabin. Ah, yes, wonderful days, wonderful days. But what do you think, dear guest? What do you think of my story? Oh, I am sorry. I forgot about the water boiling. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, indeed, I shall go check on it right away and be back with your tea. Here we are, dear guest, back with our tea that didn't take nearly so long as I thought it would, not nearly so much time as I anticipated. You are a very patient guest to stay and listen to the ramblings of mine. I am grateful. Yes, yes, I am. It is not often that I get to talk with a fellow human being. I'm too afraid to go out, you see. I can't leave my clocks. No, I mustn't leave my clocks. I can't leave them, you see. It's the only way to keep an eye on the time. A pocket watch might break. Yes, and the people might not be aware of the time as it so happens so often. I can't trust them, you see. I can only trust my clocks. They all keep time exactly with the magic clock, so I know it is exactly right. My magic clock never loses time. It must have something very special about it, so that it never needs to be fixed or reset. It just marches on. And I wonder, my dear guest, yes, I do wonder this. I think perhaps my clock from the carpenter in the mountains is time itself. Perhaps time is trapped in it, forced to move at a steady pace, forced to run by the simple workings of a clock and never to stop. Ah, what a strange and wonderful thing, isn't it? Look at it, my guest, just look at this perfect wooden clock. Admire it with me. Let us enjoy the simple life, as the old man said. It has been so long since I've done that. So long. So very long. Maybe you being here will allow me to rest my troubled mind and find peace and fascination in the clock again. Help me do that, will you? You look at the finely made coffee table in front of you with the tea and the little cakes on it. You think perhaps something must not quite be right, because you see no clock on the table. No simple wooden clock, like your host had described in his story. No clock at all on the table. Nothing but tea and little cakes. You look back at your host, about to comment on this, but you notice that your host is staring at the table with a strange look and a peaceful smile. Your host is frozen in time, seeming to stare at an invisible clock and slowly fading from your view. The house you sit in is cold and gray. All that remains is dust-covered ornate clocks on the walls that no longer keep time. All is still and deathly quiet, except for a very faint, distant ticking that you almost do not even hear. You leave the house and go back to your normal life, not sure how it all happened. It's a strange, dreamlike memory in your mind. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night or on a very still day, like the calm just before a storm, you hear it, ever so faintly, you almost can't hear it at all, and think perhaps that you don't. But it is there, the faint tick, tick, tick.